to become a nuisance. Also, there was bad publicity in the press saying people were taking drugs at that encampment. And for middle-class New Yorkers, they're the people that the Wall Street movement, the Occupy Wall Street movement, needs to get on side if it's going to make any real change to politics. So perhaps now that they've been forced to move out of that camp, they can take charge of their own media image, he says, and try and sell themselves a bit better to ordinary Americans.
Has it worked, though? Do the papers think that it has changed the views of ordinary Americans?
Well, there's an interesting piece on Slate.com. They say Occupy Wall Street being moved on by police has given them a moral victory that makes this a watershed movement. He says the movement isn't reliant anymore on the physical encampment because it's become a kind of moral franchise that's sprung up branches all around the world. And in America, they say they've achieved their main aim despite the fact that they were criticised for not having a concrete aim, because they've made ordinary families talk about income inequality at their own tables. They've made ordinary people think about who actually caused the crisis and who's paying for it, and perhaps ask if the policies, for example, that are promoted by people like Republican presidential candidates are actually necessary to fill in a gap in the US's budget, or if it's a kind of ideological project to reduce the size of the state. So they say it's a victory that people are even talking about this. But there's also a piece in The Guardian, if we have a look at that, that says that maybe the movement is in danger of being co-opted too far by mainstream politics. They say a lot of senior Democratic politicians have said they support the party, and they support the movement rather, and they've also got some funding from George Soros, who's a multi-millionaire philanthropist who backs the Democratic Party. So that article reckons the movement needs to be careful not to be co-opted too much by mainstream politicians.
Something else The Guardian is looking at is some possibly dodgy deals between hedge funds and developing countries.
Yeah, this is a bit of a bizarre story, actually. This is, obviously, there's lots of debts owed by one country to another that no one really bothers to chase up because they're owed by developing countries who can't afford to pay them back. But apparently, hedge funds are doing a rolling trade in buying up those debts and then getting court rulings which force the developing countries to pay them back. The Guardian article particularly is about one called FG Hemisphere. They've bought a $100 million debt that was owed by the Democratic Republic of Congo to Bosnia, and now they're getting a court ruling that will force the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is, of course, as a very poor country, it's got better things to spend its money on. They're trying to get a court ruling that will force them to pay the hedge fund. Now, they've been banned from seeking that court ruling in a British court, but they found a loophole. They're pursuing it through a court in Jersey.
And what have you got to finish off with?
One more thing, actually. Think of a vegetable.
Courgette. Onion.
See, you probably wouldn't say pizza, would you?
It's not a vegetable.
Well, it is, according to the US Congress, and so are chips, because they're potatoes. This is their new guidelines for what school children are allowed to be served. They're meant to get 2 or 3 servings of vegetables at every school lunch, according to the law, but the Congress are counting the tomato paste on a pizza and the potatoes in chips as a portion. Nutritionists, of course, are furious. They say there's a bad enough problem of child obesity in the US anyway, without Congress basically condoning serving children junk food.
It's a bit far-fetched. OK, thanks very much for that. Elena Casas with a look at the international newspapers. Let's now take another look at our